This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
BTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. What day of the week is it? It's Wednesday. It's already Wednesday. We're already halfway through another week, November 16th, and one of the favorite guests of BTL, the man who knows everything about bass fishing, currently and in the past, all the way back to the 1960s. We're wearing matching hats today, which is very appropriate since this week I am currently in talks for reopening the BTL merchandise store just in time. Yes, we are going to have a day 4 shirt, Ken Duke. So Uncle Frank, I did a best of Uncle Frank, and one of the sayings that he said was, I set into the fish and all of a sudden I was loaded to the cork. Loaded to the cork. And I had never heard that. But I mean, dude, it's just a mix of old school and the vision. You know, when you lean into one of those bass and it just bows deep in the rod, you're loaded to the cork. I said, that's the new shirt. So I've actually been in contact with the printing company and said, hey, we need a day 4 shirt that says loaded to the cork with the Uncle Frank logo.
When the merch drops, and I feel so 2022 when I say that merch drops, but when the merch drops, you let me know. I'm in there.
Well, I'll hook you up with that, Mr. Duke. Thanks for jumping on. It's been a minute since we've had you on, but I've had a bunch of shows where people are like, where's Ken Duke to answer this question? So here you are.
I'm always here. I'm here in Florida, where it all happens, the center of the bass universe, Matt. I'm deep in the bass bunker here in the Orlando area. Always excited to be on BTL. Always excited to talk to you, whether we're on the show or off. Thank you very much for having me.
It is. I don't know if you're saying that facetiously or not, but I mean, they did just have that NPFL Derby down there, and I was shocked at the number of 26, 27, 28-pound bags that came out of October in Florida. And outside of like a wild card that they had there, I think they did like a golden ticket tournament with Bass a number of years, but there's very few October big-time derbies in Florida, and it was impressive to me, some of those weights that came out of the NPFL.
Yeah, and October, November, those are traditionally pretty tough times here in Florida. It's transition. It's starting to get really cold. It was only in the 80s yesterday. And, we're chilly here. I'm thinking about a long sleeve t-shirt.
Oh, this is going to be a good show. You're full of it today.
Oh, yeah, I'm fired up, man. I'm on BTL. What am I waiting for except to fire up on BTL? But I was at that NPFL tournament. I really enjoyed the dynamic there, the personalities, some very talented anglers there. I mean, Patrick Walters is out there, Justin Kimmel, who's going to be making a name for himself. Some other elite guys, Jason Williamson's out there. They've got something going on. It's a lot of fun to watch. I enjoyed my time with Brad Fuller, Paul Benson, the guys who run those events. I was impressed.
Where does that fit into the landscape of pro fishing, in your opinion, Ken? Where does that NPFL fit in?
Well, I don't think they're currently drawing the caliber of anglers across the board that we see with MLFLW or B.A.S.S. But I'm also, not clear on their business model. When Paul and Brad explained their business model to me a few years ago, I thought it was very different. And I thought it was going to face some challenges. What I have learned is that there are a lot of people who desperately want to become a pro angler, and they're willing to. And their guys are all very financially soluble. The guys who fish NPFL, they have money.
They've made good life decisions is what you're trying to say.
Exactly. They made good life decisions. They put themselves in a financial position that they can fish professionally, that they can follow a national tour and be out there. So whatever number starts the season, that number is able to finish the season financially. They may make other decisions and decide to fish other tours at some point, but it's an interesting business model. It's an interesting dynamic. I think if they can build a platform media-wise, that they're a player. And that, to me, is going to be a big telling point, because one of the mistakes that I think some of the organizations have made in the past, including B.A.S.S. B.A.S.S. made this mistake for a while, is when they tell you that the most important anglers in their universe, the most important people in their membership, are the ones who fish their professional tournaments. I think that's a mistake. If the most important people to you are not your rank and file audience, the guys who are paying their annual dues, the guys who are watching on YouTube or on a website or on television, if those are not your most important people, I generally think you may be doomed to failure. And rightly so.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens. I know massive interest in the Bassmaster Open Elite qualifiers this year. Rumors swirling as to how many guys are signed up for all 9, but I think when that number actually is announced by Bass, that it will be shocking as to how many have signed up for all 9 at 1,800. Interesting dynamics going on with the new BPT invitationals, as far as some of the anglers that I've heard are receiving invites who had average Toyota Series finishes, not just the top 10 guys. Now, that's not new for FLW. I think one year I received an invite to the FLW tour and I finished like 40th in the points. I finished 39th and got it. But there's a lot of moving and shaking going on, and then the MPFL comes out with $6,000 or $6,000 in entry fees next year. So over the next 2 or 3 months, it's really good if you have a podcast that covers this stuff. But I think you're going to see a lot of moving and a lot of eye-opening numbers of who's where, when, what, and why. Agreed?
Absolutely agree. I think that when B.A.S.S. came out, I'm just use them as an example because I think they're maybe the clearest example here. When B.A.S.S. came out and said, hey, you got to fish all 9 of our opens to qualify for the elites, or that's what we're going to base our scoring on. I think they were saying, we think there is a backlog of anglers, talented anglers who have the talent and financial wherewithal to make it to the Elite Series and to stay there, whether they're leaving MLFLW or whatever the situation may be. They were saying to that audience, that core group, we want you, come fish with us. We know only a handful of you guys can do all 9, but you're going to radically improve your chances of qualifying for the Elite Series. I think that was the clear message. And I think if you were a college angler just getting out of school and you wanted to get to the elites, that was an ugly slap in the face. That was a bitch slap from reality right there. But if you're Bobby Lane or somebody else, that's a much clearer path. And I think that it was an interesting move. It was a very calculated move. But now, is like you were just saying, Matt, the fields are filling up. There are going to be a lot more guys doing all 9 opens than maybe even B.A.S.S. anticipated. So that the path to the elites is going to be a bit of a gauntlet.
See, I got to disagree with you there. I think we're going to see a massive influx of young college anglers or guys just out of college, because think about this. Not married, no kids, a lot less financial responsibility. You're not thinking of financial ruin at that age. You can float the 35, 40. They got no problem traveling together, splitting expenses, sleeping on the floor of carpets. It's 9 tournaments that I think they're more likely to go at. I think where you're going to see the guys get squeezed out are the guys that have been fishing the 3 that have financially secure jobs, the 401ks, the stuff where they can't get the 9 weeks off, that are the talented middle of the road anglers. I'm talking about established at everything, and they're like, dude, I can't swing this because of how much I have to put on the line for something that is obviously not a guarantee. So I think you're going to see the top end, and I think you're going to see a ton of those younger guys that just come out where you're like, where are all these 20 to 24-year-olds coming from. I think that's way less intimidating for a 20 to 24-year-old right out of college that might have help from his parents, that might have a job, that might be able to do something and work on the road or just swing it somehow, than the guys that are 25 to 40.
Obviously, you may be absolutely right about that. What I hope doesn't happen, but what I absolutely expect to happen among that group, the 22, 23, 24-year-old kids fresh out of college in the college program, is that they've been pumped so full of this dream that they're going to get out there and they're going to say basically, well, I'm going to pay my. Why do I always drop into this goofy voice whenever I'm characterizing?
There's a lot of northern guys you could be like, oh, I'm going to pay my $16,200, you know?
I'll become a Canadian angler for a moment.
You could just be a normal guy. I know what you're saying.
He says, I'm gonna pay my. I'm Cajun. Oh, I'm gonna pay my entry fees for my second and third tournaments with what I win on my first tournament.
Dude, if you're from Canada, you catch them. That's what we're learning. But with Coop coming in and the Johnsons and Gussie and stuff, like if you're dedicated and come down from Canada, you're gonna catch fish. I mean, look at like Eric Luce, all these guys are. You come from Canada, you catch them. That's just what we're learning.
There's a lot of good Canadian anglers out there, which is amazing because I believe their bass season is 3 weeks long. But I think a lot of these college kids are going to get out there. They're going to get their butts kicked early, and they're going to find out that either they think, oh, when we move north, I'm going to do better. When we do this, I'm going to do better. But a lot of them are going to drop out after 2, 3, 4 events, and they're not going to see the whole thing through. But it'll be interesting. And guys like the Bobby Lanes of the world, the other established pros of the world who are going to be out there fishing the opens, they've got the talent, they've got the skills. They're not going to panic if they have a bad tournament. And they'll be out there for all 9.
I'm going to disagree with you again. Let's go back to the 2021, the guys who are on the Elite Series now that made it through. Cody Huff, Jay Shakurit, Jacob Fouts, Jonathan Kelly, Alex Redwine. I mean, dude, those guys are all like 22 to 23 years old. They went out and they just went out and dominated last year. And then if you look in this year, we had the same thing happen.
They didn't have to fish 9 events to get there. I think success in the elites and qualifying for the elites are 2 very different things. You can qualify for the elites if you have 6 good days of fishing.
Not anymore, yeah. Coop did it in the overall. So did Cole Sands. Logan Parks was just out of it in the overall. But yeah, no, I agree with you. You see Poche up there. Yeah, okay, I would agree with you on that.
And the other thing about it, and you see this every time you go to a derby, is that the guys who have fished at the top level before, not only do they have really valuable experience, but these guys know how to fish 3-day tournaments. And a lot of these younger guys don't have a lot of 3-day tournament experience. And I see those guys consistently. I see the guys who have 3 and 4-day tournament experience consistently doing better than the guys who don't. And, how that plays out ultimately, I don't know. You could be absolutely right.
That's right this year if you look at it. In the top, let's just do the top. Keith Poche, a lot of experience. David Gasson, he's at Kenta. Shane Lineberger, Bradley Hallman, Garrett Paquette, Daryl Gleason. Those guys are all in the top 15. And out of a lot, that's an abnormally amount who have had 3 and 4-day experience on multiple tour levels.
And not all those guys had huge success at the highest level, but they have a lot of experience fishing those multiple day tournaments, practicing for and fishing those multiple day tournaments. I think it's an acquired skill.
It is. It'll be very interesting to see how it goes down. Like the rate of attrition, though. So you're on the 200-point system. This is what I've been talking with a bunch of guys about, too, who are also fishing it. So on a 200-point system, Bass opens it up to 250 boats from the numbers I'm hearing. There's going to be 250 boats at Eufaula in Alabama on the first one. Probably in each division, they'll fill it, 250. But that means that 50, 100, 150, 205, that means 20% of the field, right? 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, yeah, 20% of the field will not get a point.
Yeah, but generally speaking, the difference between not getting a point and finishing, 50, 60 places better than that is insignificant.
Well, 50 points is a lot more than 0.
50 points is a lot more than 0, but I'm just saying that if you bomb that badly in a tournament, you can make it up in a 9-event season, and you can't in a 3-event season.
Yeah,
So
it's really hard to if you get 0 points though, and now you're trying to finish in the top 9 on 8 tournaments versus 9 tournaments.
But again, how many guys are you really competing against? How many guys are going to actually fish all 9?
A lot.
What's a lot?
I don't know. What do you think a lot is?
I think a lot might be 15, 16.
That fish all 9? This year? You are off by over 100, Ken.
That fish all 9. I'm not talking about say they're going to fish all 9.
Yeah, you're off by over 100.
I'm not talking about sign up for all 9. I'm not talking about any of that.
100 guys this year. I will make a bet. I will make a bet with you this right now.
Okay. Let's be serious for a moment and let's put the over under at 50. You take the over, I'll take the under.
Any amount of money that you would like to bet on that, Ken, I am 100% in. I'll give you 100. There will be 100 guys that fish all 9 for the duration of the season this year in the Opens.
Let's put $100 on it.
That's $1 at angler. That's the easiest $100 I've ever made.
All right. Write this down.
That fish all 9.
The fish all 9 that show up and compete in all 9. The over under is 50. You've got the over.
You're doing 50. I was giving it to you at 100. Let's cut the difference then and do 75 then.
Okay, 75.
I guarantee you I will win that bet.
All right. You may absolutely do it. But you know what? That means there will have been a cosmic shift in the world of professional and wannabe professional bass fishing.
Ken, I am saying that there is a cosmic shift in the world of professional and wannabe professional bass fishermen that is happening right now.
I have missed those things before, so I don't disbelieve you. I just think I got to see.
So we're going with 75.
Let's go 75.
Okay, we can do that. Let's move on to more. Tom says, "Pay Panger now, Duke."
You may be right, Tom.
John Stewart says, no way.
Matt is so confident. He does have me worried.
I've never been more confident in anything in my life. Anyway, something that I am also have never been more confident in is the quality and entertainment value of this big bass, big fish podcast that you have been talking about for a year now. It's all over the instant feedback. A lot of guys asking about it. And I do believe that you have an update for us, Mr. Duke.
I do indeed, Matt. Thank you for bringing it up. I appreciate the opportunity for the shameless plug. The Big Bass Podcast, which is me and Terry Battisti and our buddy and producer engineer Nathan Benson, longtime friend of mine. We recorded our first episode last night, and our plan is to launch it on January 3rd, 2023. So we're gonna get a bunch of them in the can, and we'll have them launched and out there for folks to check out on January 3rd. So really excited about it. Finally did it, and you know what it took for me to do this, Matt, was I suddenly realized there's just no way I was going to be able to do one a week for a year, for the whole year and so forth, that I was going to make myself crazy because I try to be very, very thorough and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I just said, I'm not going to be able to do it. There's no way. So I looped in my buddy, Terry Battisti, who is a very serious bass historian, extremely knowledgeable, extraordinarily smart guy. And I thought, well, not only will Terry help in that workload and dividing it up, but Terry's going to help make me more accountable on this. So we are co-hosting it. We are, trying to create an interesting dynamic in the conversation between the two of us, talking about it's not going to be like a how-to thing on how to catch a big fish. It's going to be more about historical big fish. We're going to talk about the world record largemouth, the world record smallmouth. Our first episode that we recorded, I'm not sure it's going to be the first one that we post, is about a fish caught in 1884 that arguably should be the world record even today. So we're going to talk about a lot of fish that maybe people have never heard of.
Wow.
We're going to talk about fish people have heard of, but we're going to try to give you a dynamic and tell you some things that maybe you didn't know. So we're really excited about it, and it was great to finally record one last night.
For those of you that don't know, Terry runs Bass Fishing Archives. I just threw this website up. It is I'm guessing that Terry's probably not making six figures on Bass Fishing Archives, and it is more of a passion project for him. I mean, it's what he does, but here's the thing. It's really hard to get people just jacked up about conservation efforts and history, which are two of the most important things in the sport, in my opinion. So I'm going to throw Terry Battisti's Bass Fishing Archives up. And, dude, if you want to get an amazing understanding of the sport with hours and hours of stuff that will make you just go, that's freaking crazy. I mean, here's Electronics Fishing 1962. Here's Smallmouth Magazines, Western Champs 1976, a glance at the 1975, big money bass tournaments pop up, all sorts of crazy stuff. The spinnerbait companies, old bass boats. It is a treasure trove of information to really put what's going on in today into perspective. So little shout out to Terry Battisti there, Bass Fishing Archives.
Thank you for that, Matt. Yeah, Bass Fishing Archives is a terrific site, a wealth of information, and we're hoping to bring the same thing to Big Bass, historical Big
January
Bass.
3rd, available on podcast platforms, website. Where are we going to be able to listen to this?
Okay. All of the above.
Okay.
That's Nathan's job, Matt. Nathan's going to make sure that we're on Apple Podcasts and maybe Stitcher and whatever. And we're going to have a website, which is going to be thebigbasspodcast.com. You can email us.
Dude, this is going to blow up. I don't think you understand how much this is going to blow up, dude.
Well, I hope you're right. I mean, that would be great. And I'm so lucky to have friends like you who have been so supportive and so helpful and have occasionally kicked me in the rear about not having done this earlier. So thank you for all of that.
I'm just saying, I think the two things that drive traffic and make people watch it are controversy / cheating and big fish. And this is a combination of both of those. You cannot miss with it. All right, we got to go back to this because this is grinding my gears. So Rich Lindgren says it'll be interesting to see how many versus how many compete for all year for the Opens, right? And then John follows up, you made your own points, Matt. Guys that bomb once or twice will drop. Here's why I don't think that will happen. I think you're going to see an influx of what I would call professional anglers who are used to competing on a trail, who have worked with sponsors to feel somewhat at least financially secure, like, hey, I am doing this for the next 2 or 3 years. They have the go-ahead from their sponsors to do it, and they are not looking at it like, hey, I'm going to go back to my regular job. If I bomb a couple, they are looking at it as a career move, like Bradley Hallman did, who spent 3 years doing it. I think they are committed and they are into all 9. Their focus may shift then to cashing checks or trying to win to get into the Bassmaster Classic, but I don't think you are going to have as many just random guys who then don't have anything in it. I think you're seeing an abnormal amount of anglers who have sponsored dollars that are coming into their LLCs, their individual sole proprietor LLCs, to fish the Opens, and that messes it up if they stop fishing them because now they don't have any value even at that AAA level. So I think that's going to keep more anglers in it even when they're technically out of it for the top 9.
Okay. You may be absolutely right. I think you're describing a level of professionalism and commitment that I have not seen at the Opens level. And I hope you're right, because it will indicate that cosmic shift.
Yeah.
A tectonic shift in the world of professional bass fishing that would be brand new.
When I win this bet, well, no, because I need a hat before I win the bet, because I technically won't win the bet until next October. I see, you got the BTL. I need one of those hats. That's a cool hat. I like that you're already exploiting the merch drops.
This is a one of a kind hat. Right now, there's only one. Even Battisti and Nathan Benson don't have this hat. Oh, right. Tom's telling me I got to pay you now. Unbelievable. Come on, folks. How about a little bit of confidence in me?
Is saying there will be at least 20 still in it to make 9 at the last Derby. I agree. I would venture to say there might be 25 or 30 in it at the last Derby, especially if you're able to keep those numbers up over 200, because the volatility of a point structure, the more boats you have in it towards the end allow for a lot more jumping and a lot more dropping. Uh-oh.
Again,
Duke's reaching for something.
Absolutely right.
What are you reaching for, Ken?
What's that?
What are you reaching for?
I'm reaching for. I'll show you. I'll show you. Don't you worry. I'm apparently going to become the Karl Rove of BTL, because I'm going to show you.
That's who I thought Karl Rove was. Okay, now I'm interested to see where you're going with this.
Here's Open's attendance through the season. It starts high. It ends low. It's what's killed a lot of the Opens formats through the years. It's what's killed the Western Opens. You know, attendance is great the first few events, and then the first event, and then it drops. And then by the final event of the season, it's usually about half what it was.
Okay, well this year. Let's just look at this year then. All right, let's do the.
And I'll wait before you do that, and by all means do that. But I will say this: I think the one thing you have seriously going in your favor on this bet is that we are experiencing tremendous change in the sport over the last few years since the split between B.A.S.S and MLF, and it's a new dynamic out there. And each of the leagues is either doing something. In the case of MLF, which draws people to it or drives people away. And then you have B.A.S.S on the other side doing less things differently, but also drawing people to it or driving people away. And all things are possible, I think, right now.
189 fished the final Central Open on Sam Rayburn this year. No, that's not right. Yeah, that is right. 189. 225 fished the first Central Open on Ross Barnett.
That's a fairly significant drop, but it's not as much as in ordinary years.
Yeah, I remember some years like where it ended on Oneida and there was like 102 boats or something like that in it, and you're like, what the heck? And then they still paid out 40.
Right. And that's historically the norm, what you're describing. Historically the norm to drop to maybe 65% of the field from the first Open. Now they've done some things to manipulate that, like when you're in for the Bassmaster Classic. Stuff like that is designed simply to manipulate the system, simply to game the system and to keep people involved. Everything about bass tournaments at the highest level and at the level where you qualify for the highest level is geared, reverse engineered to keep people playing. Whether it is winning you're in, whether it is expanding it to say you gotta fish 9, whether it's whatever it is, but everything they do is designed for something more than just having a great tournament. It's designed for maintaining the field, elevating the level of the field, something like that. There's always stuff behind it.
I just can't believe we had a Karl Rove reference on BTL.
He's always got his dry erase board, and I like the dry erase board.
That's well done.
I'm going to bring this one out next time.
Okay, all right. Let's move on by this. Let's take our first break of the show. When we come back, we'll argue about more stuff.
I love it.
BTL on a Wednesday with the man and host of the Big Bass podcast, Ken Duke. We'll be back right after this.
Your key to better fishing this season is Elite FS, now available at a new lower price. Get Elite FS 9 today for $9.99, and we'll throw in a C-Map reveal chart, our premium mapping solution, for free. Elite FS works with all state-of-the-art Lowrance sonar, from chirp, side scan, and down scan imaging with fish reveal to high-resolution active target live sonar. Elite FS9 and CMAP reveal. Offer ends August 31st.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Bass Cat. Feel the rush.
Hey guys, Gerald Swindle representing the AFCO Hydronaut. This is the jacket I love wearing when times is tough, and I'm talking about the weather, not the fishing. The jacket, what I like, I got a double cup right here. I can seal up the bottom of my jacket because when you're fishing, you're holding your arms up. You're bad about getting water that runs downhill. Everything bends good. I'm long arm. Look, it fits very comfortable. My arms is flexible. I've got the speed hood on, pouring down rain. I can get everything zipped up. One thing they did is they made plenty of pocket space. If you ain't got enough pockets in the Hydronaut rain suit, you just got too much stuff. From the water membrane, that's 30K, baby. 30 times the reason you ain't gonna get wet. Super warm. If it's cold in the wintertime, you put on your Hydronaut, you're gonna be a much more comfortable person. If you don't want to just look sexy at Dairy Queen, wear your Hydronaut. We got it from small to 5X. Most rain gear does not come in that many sizes. You got waist adjusting straps. We can make it fit you. No matter what the environment is, we want you to be comfortable. We want you to be dry. You gotta check it out. It ain't gonna let you down.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
All right, welcome back. BTL on a Wednesday with the man Ken Duke. And before, we had a spirited discussion about the Bassmaster Opens coming up in 2023. Probably the most anticipated rollout that I can remember in recent history since the BPT kicked off in 2019. Would you not disagree with that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a big move by Bass, and I like it. I think it's a smart move by Bass. They're doing what they can to attract the very best anglers, and not just the best anglers, the most talent, which you gain by going over a longer period of time. You know, the cream rises to the top. So I think that's a smart play, but also on a really practical and business level, you want to get the guys who can afford to stay and play at the elite level. And anybody who can get out there and fish all 9 events in the Opens is likely to be one of those guys. I also say, watch out, Matt Pangrack. There's a comment on the YouTube posts from John Stewart. I believe it's John Stewart who is at Bass and does a fabulous job with a lot of their programs there. He's tight with
he's retired. He's retired.
Oh my gosh, John retired. That's right. Yeah. I heard that.
I got to get him on the show. I think I've had some conversations with him. I think he's opening up a lodge on Grand Lake.
Wow.
Yeah, like you can go hang out, catch Grand Lake bass, and stay at John's lodge.
Well, John is one of the most passionate and dedicated people in the bass fishing world. And John and I did not always see eye to eye.
He just described him as spirited discussions.
Yes, John and I had many a spirited discussion. Thank you, John. That's right. But you know what? I have a ton of respect for that guy. He's smart. He's passionate. And I never doubted where his heart was. But we each doubted where the other's brain was at times.
Yeah.
But I have a ton of respect for Jon Stewart.
And I did too. He was very instrumental in keeping the Bass Nation alive and drawing as much attention as he could to the Bass Nation Championship, something that's very near and dear to my heart. And something that I think is really in not like in jeopardy, but in flux. I think we're going to see some changes to that. I think good changes, but like that was always an uphill battle with John. I would come on BTL, I remember, and rant and be like, why on live are we not promoting the fact that you're sending 3 guys to the Classic through this, that's how Brandon got here and Caleb Sumrall got here and all these guys that are catching them. Why could they not take a 45-second ad block and really pump it and say, hey, are you sitting at home in your living room with 4 weeks? You could make the state team and go to your regional and go to this national championship and change your life for like less than $1,000 worth of entry fees, and you only have to leave your state twice.
Yeah, back when I was in charge of the content and so forth on bassmaster.com, I learned a few things, and you alluded to them a little earlier, Matt. Conservation does not get an audience.
No.
And as far as competition and so forth goes, the elites would draw a big audience, bigger than an average day where your content is primarily how-to and stuff like that. When there was an open, your audience would be about the same as when you're running some good how-to content.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, I'll call it below opens, even though that's not the best term. But if it was a nation tournament or something like that, your audience, grassroots, your audience would actually go below an average day. And that's one of the challenges. When that happens, it's hard to dedicate the resources to help elevate that. And it's a double-edged sword, because you can easily say, well, if we dedicated the resources and we promoted it, then it would elevate. And perhaps that's right. But by the same token, it's hard to devote the resources to something that's not performing at the same level as some of the
I
other
agree.
things.
I mean, look over on MLF. Right now they got Thrift's like man cave up. It's just freaking crazy. But I like way more likely to watch 18 minutes of that than like what's going on at a BFL wild card or something like that.
Absolutely. And it's like I said, it's a double-edged sword. There's really no winning. I always, I'm guilty of this. Like I think most people are. I'm always trying to find a way to win, and to solve the problem, but sometimes there's no solve. Sometimes there's only compromise and trying to figure out what doesn't piss off everybody in the known universe.
Speaking of the Bass Nation, you texted me about this very familiar name that just won it. William Davis Jr. got the job done on a crazy stingy Pickwick. Jon Stewart will actually like this. So Jared Miller did the whole loophole thing and got in through Colorado, like actually did enjoy Bass Nation, has like a residence. Anyway, long story short, he did it 100% legally, but he made the state team again. And he made it last year when we fished in Kansas. God, I can't even remember the name of the lake. It traumatized me that bad. I blocked it out and put it in a deep recess on my mind. And it was absolutely brutal. And Pickwick was so tough that Miller texted me it was tougher than the regional in Kansas last year. And I said, oh my gosh, that is tough. But William Davis gets the job done
every day.
Yeah, William Davis gets the job done. And that is a name that is probably not familiar with many people, but that family has been in the industry for a long time, and there's a lot of deep connections and roots there.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting that we're talking about Will Davis, who just won the Bass Nation Championship, and also Jon Stewart, who used to run a lot of those events. John used to always be upset with me when I would do my Bassmaster Classic odds on Bassmaster.com, because I always had the Nation guys as long shots. Well, John, you retired too soon, brother. I'm going to tell everybody right now, Will Davis can win the Bassmaster Classic. He can absolutely win that tournament. He is that good. He has that kind of mental toughness, and he has that kind of game. So finally, John, here's a nation guy who I would pick to be way, 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 way better than having an average shot at winning the Bassmaster Classic. And to your point, Matt, yeah, the Davis family, Davis Bait Company, Will's dad. I call Will is the guy who just won the Bass Nation. William is the dad. William built the first swim jigs. We will never know who was the first guy to swim a jig. It's whoever wound a jig in after crawling it and hopping it and didn't get a bite. So he hustles it in and bam, one hits. That's the first guy who ever swam a jig. But William Davis built the first jigs designed for that purpose. And he did it back in the 70s when he was 15 years old.
All right, so this is the cool thing. So, I started my first national publication and article, which I don't write like this anymore, was Bass West USA magazine. And this is kind of cool. So when I heard this, I was like, I feel like I wrote something for Davis Bait Company. And this is still on their website. This was from 2010. And it was a bait company profile, Davis Bait Company. And I remember, right, I was reading it and I was like, it kind of sounds a little like my pretentious writing at the time, which it was. How pretentious is this? That's where the story of William Davis and Davis Bait Company diverges from the path most often traveled by small lure companies. It's a freaking fishing magazine. Just use normal language, Matt. But anyway, it talks about how, it goes through all that. And I at the time, I remember him talking about his kid was really good and into it. So this was 2010. So this was 12 years ago. So his kid would have been 17, 18, just going to college. And there's a sidebar at the bottom. And it says, once a diehard tournament angler, Davis said that he gave up the majority of his tournaments to focus on the business and ultimately his family. Once my son is out of college, I may go back fishing more, said Davis. Until then, my focus is on my family and the company. That should leave time more. And it was cool that was still available because I had to Google it. I was like, there's no way that's still out on the website, but it is. And then if I was right, that was him up on stage with William Jr. when he won the national championship, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, dude, that's such a cool full circle story right there. And now has a potential to fish the Elite Series with part of his entry fees paid for. He's in a classic that you said he's going to be one of the favorites for. I mean, just a freaking awesome story.
Well, it is. They're a great, great family, wonderful people. To know them is to love and respect those guys. And I think Will is actually in a strong position because he's going to slip under the radar. Not a lot of people are going to pick him. Not a lot of people are going to follow him on the water, maybe. But this is a guy who I think I think he's got the best chance to win from the nation in forever. Because remember, when Kirchhoff won in '94, nobody was expecting Kirchhoff to do well. He had finished last.
But he'd already fished one.
Yeah, he'd already fished one. But this guy is fishing his first Bassmaster Classic. He's going to go out there and fish the elites. He's the real deal. And William Davis is you can't say he's the father of swimming a jig, but you can say he's the father of the swim jig. And he's also the father of the shaky head. And this guy has had a massive impact on.
Didn't he work with Aaron on that big time? Didn't Aaron and him work really closely together for a lot of time?
They did. They worked together a lot on what William and Davis Bait Company called the shaky fish.
Okay.
Which is a descendant of the scrounger. Yeah, okay. It's a great bait. And it was the bait that Will Davis won the Bass Nation Championship on, was the shaky fish, which a lot of people would identify as a scrounger. It's got that clear Lexan or whatever lip.
All right, let's make another bet.
Uh-oh.
I had Tristan McCormick on yesterday on the show. Strike King, college bracket champion, fished all the opens under the college with Bethel, won the open to get into next year's classic. He's from Tennessee, very familiar with that stretch of Tennessee River. He didn't say he was like a juggernaut on it, but he said that he was very familiar with it. He has already fished in a classic. He fished in the classic last year at Hartwell, so he knows what's up. He knows what it's going to be. He said it's a tournament he thinks. So I think you could see Tristan McCormick and Will Davis Jr. in the top 10 on the final day of the Classic. I think that is a very strong likelihood after talking with you about William Davis, his affinity towards current, that type of fishing, and then what the interview with Tristan was.
So what is the bet here? Which one finishes higher?
No, I mean, I think they both make the top 10. There's no bet between us. I'm just throwing that out there. I think that if you could parlay two anglers like to make the top 10, I would pick those two.
I think those are great picks.
That's not a bad bet. That's not a bet. I guess that's a bold statement. Let's make a bold prediction. Let's call it a bold prediction instead of a bet.
To have guys coming from where they came from to finish in the top 10 in the Classic, it would be very unusual to have a Nation guy and an Open winner both in the top 10. That doesn't happen very much.
It's going to happen. Holy cow, we haven't talked about anything that's on the list, Mr. Duke. We're 45 minutes in.
For everybody watching or listening here, just to give you a little dynamic about how BTL comes to life and comes out to you, I'll get a text. I got a text last week from Matt. I had reached out to Matt for something unrelated
about Will Davis. And anyway, so he texts me back and says, "Hey, can you do BTL on Wednesday?" So I said, "Sure, thanks. I always love doing BTL." Then this morning, at about maybe 8:40 my time, about 7:30 my time.
Yeah. So I get a call from Matt saying, "Hey, here's what we're going to talk about." So I have basically no heads up. So if I look really stupid and scattered,
I gave you a half hour. You need 10 minutes. I pointed that out.
I will say this.
You just go to your book, you open it to that page, you write a couple of the numbers down, and you've got it.
The 45 minutes he gave me was unprecedented. I've never had that much time before. And there have been many, many times with Matt, or before when it was Matt and Mark, when I would get absolutely zero heads up as to what we're going to talk about.
That's the best way it is. All right, let's start on the list then.
Okay.
What's the most okay, we'll start with Larry Nixon returning to Bass, and that will parlay into what you feel are the most important statistics in analyzing and placing where an angler stands in history. So, in your opinion, how significant is it that Larry Nixon fishes the last Open on Sam Rayburn to be an active B.A.S.S. member, then has the statistics to take the Legends exemption and is now competing in the Bassmaster Elite Series after a hiatus with the FLW tour for 15 years?
Yeah, Larry hasn't fished. The last B.A.S.S. event Larry had fished, I believe, was the 2006 Classic. Did he make that one?
Yeah, I'll look it up one second. Continue.
I love it. I love seeing Larry Nixon back. My hope, my concern, my fear is that Bass will not leverage it properly, will not make a big enough deal about it, because there are not a lot of people currently at Bass who have a ton of historical and institutional knowledge and background. There are a lot of people who don't appreciate who Larry Nixon is. And that's unfortunate, but I'm very hopeful that the ones who do have the institutional knowledge and some history will embrace Larry Nixon's return, because I think it's a big deal. And Larry Nixon, I think, could absolutely qualify for another Bassmaster Classic. And I think anybody who doesn't think that Larry Nixon is capable of finishing in the top half of the elite field is kidding themselves.
You're correct. Outside of the 21st place finish on Sam Rayburn, which I didn't know this was going on. Did he do anything that said he was fishing it? Because I'm looking at the standings going, I'm sliding in for a check, and I'm like, wait a second, Larry Nixon?
Well, that kind of goes back to what I'm saying about let's make a big deal out of this. This is one of the all-time greats, one of the 5, 6 greatest professional anglers of all time. He's coming back to what we'll call his roots, because he's been fishing bass since about 1977, and or at least full time. He fished from 77 through the 2005 season, and wildly impressive record there. And he needs to be given a spotlight. He deserves it. And it does a great thing for your audience too, because when there was the big defection from the Elite Series over to MLF, it left just a handful of guys who had meaningful history at Bass. It left, obviously, the great Rick Clunn. It left David Fritz. It left Bernie Schultz. It left, but just a handful of people.
Mm-hmm.
Getting NIXON back to me is a big deal. I'll be scanning the standings every day of the elite season, looking for Larry NIXON, just like I do for Rick Clunn.
Okay, so that parlays nicely into the next thing on the list, which is, what stats do you consider most valuable in determining the legacy and where an angler sits all time? Are we looking at wins, classics, angler of the years, consistencies, qualifying for championships, top 20s? What are we looking at when you're looking at where this angler, and this is a very small group of anglers that we're comparing. Like I am, let's do it, Ken. Let's compare Larry NIXON to Rick Clunn. Let's have this conversation right now, because you are the only person that I think has the ability to speak of this conversation.
Well, thank you. That's high praise. I appreciate that. I'm not sure it's true, but thank you anyway. When we talked before the show, I had a different idea of where you were going with this. I didn't know you were talking about evaluating an angler all time, but I thought you were talking about evaluating an angler in a season relative to the rest of the field kind of thing.
No. I'm talking all time. Like, we're looking back on it because now Larry NIXON is coming back.
Well, let's examine a couple of things. And one of the things I think that's a big deal is number of major championships qualified for. And Larry NIXON leads the way. And it's not particularly close. You know, Clunn has been to 32 classics, and he's fished a handful of FLW championships. NIXON's fished a lot more FLW championships, and NIXON has fished, I think, 25 classics. Mm-hmm. NIXON's got the edge there, and I think that's important. But I'm not willing to put all my statistical eggs in that one basket, because once you get to the championship, obviously, it's nice if you can win it. And Clunn's done that 4 times to NIXON's 1. Other guys who've qualified for a lot of championships, you know, you got to look at guys like George Cochran, guys like Gary Klein, Denny Brower, Kevin Van Dam's qualified for a lot of championships. But NIXON has qualified for a lot more. Is some of that because NIXON's older? You know, he's got 7 or 8 years on Klein. He's got, 17 years on Van Dam. That's obviously a factor. We don't know how long some of these guys are going to hang around, but having qualified for so many championships is a big deal to me. And if I had to isolate one stat to evaluate guys for the totality of their career, I would probably pick number of major championships qualified for. And I would restrict that to the Bassmaster Classic, the Forest Wood Cup, and the Red Crest. What do you think?
That sounds fair. So since 2000...
but let me back up. I do not think that, despite the fact that Larry NIXON has qualified for more than anybody else, I do not rank Larry NIXON number 1 in among the all-time great tournament anglers.
That's right.
I think he's top 5 or 6.
Is Rick number 1 in your book?
I think it's Kevin Van Dam.
Really?
Yeah, Kevin's won as many classics as Rick has. Kevin's been to almost as many classics, and you know, Kevin might have exceeded Rick's classic total had he stayed at Bass. He'd still be chasing it, I think. But and Kevin also won 7 Angler of the Year titles to Rick's 1. So I'm going to rank Van Dam number 1. I'm going to rank Clunn number 2. I'm going to rank Roland Martin number 3. Then it gets, so hazy and almost subjective, because where do you put Bill Dance? Where do you put Larry NIXON? Where do you put Hank Parker?
You have to put Larry NIXON ahead of them because of the longevity. Listen, the guy's qualified for 15 FLW Cups since 2000. 15 since 2000. He's in his 70s. He's averaged 10.4 tournaments a year since 1976. the longevity, I think, in some of that bumps him up over. I mean, yeah, those guys are still relevant, but how long has it been since Bill Dance was competitively fishing?
Bill ended his career in 1980, and but you know what? And the times were so different. You know, it was hard, if not impossible, to earn a living off fishing a tournament and your sponsorships back then. Bill went into television. Hank Parker went into television.
I don't care about television. I want to talk about tournaments.
I understand that, but with regard to Bill Dance and Hank Parker in particular, we're not talking about guys who slunk. Don't even think of the right word. Who hid their faces and went off to television. We're talking about guys who are on top of their game, and went off to television. And who knows what they might have done. They weren't mediocre anglers who left for TV on the decline. They were top level anglers who chose another path because the path in tournament fishing wasn't good. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I'm not going to give them credit for something they didn't do.
Right.
So I'm gonna drop them a little bit.
So that means Larry would be number 4 in your list.
But you also got Denny Brower. It's such a tough call. But yeah, Larry Nixon. I'm very happy to say Larry Nixon's number 4. I got no problem with that.
Okay. That's interesting. So since 2000, Rick has qualified for 6 classics. Larry's qualified for 15 FLW Cups, and the field size was typically 50 to 70 anglers more than the Elite Series from 2006 on. Now, the fields were different from 2000 to 2006 before they went to that kind of rough 100 number.
And I don't think the FLW field was of the same caliber.
That's also a good point.
And that's a factor here. And that's why evaluating guys is so tricky and so subjective. You and I can talk about who had the stronger strength of field for the rest of the day, and we won't reach any sort of meaningful conclusion. It'll just be our personal feelings about it.
Yeah, I mean, since 2010, he's only had 7 top 10s in the last 12 years. But then you look at it and you're like, dang, that's almost a top 10 a year.
But he hasn't won. Clun's won twice in the last 10 years.
God, that's a great discussion.
I love discussions like this. But what's frustrating to me is there can be no meaningful resolution. I thoroughly enjoyed the fan poll that ESPN did back in 2005. They called it the greatest angler debate.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick Clunn won, hands down. Wasn't close. Roland Martin was second. Bill Dance was third. But Clunn won hands down. And I learned so much just from how that vote went down. I had access to the actual numbers of the polling, and they weren't released, but I have access to that. Can share it with you sometime. Happy to share it on the show if I can dig it up off the computer somewhere. But it showed me that Clunn, to the audience, I'm not saying it's some objective truth. I'm saying to the audience, Clunn's 4 classic championships were more valuable than Roland Martin's 9 Angler of the Year titles. And I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, it is. 9 is unbelievable. And 4
I think
is
that
unbelievable.
you, as a tournament angler, as a competitor, wouldn't you personally rather win Angler of the Year than to win the season-ending championship? I mean, take money out of it.
Listen, I'll be honest. Growing up, when I was at Rock Springs Pond catching bass, I never pretended that it was the bass for me to win Angler of the Year. I always pretended that bass was to win the Bassmaster Classic. I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, I grew up with the Bassmaster Classic, not the Angler of the Year. It wasn't until I got in the industry and started hanging out and covering the professional anglers and the Angler of the Year race that I learned the value that the small community puts on Angler of the Year and how difficult it is to win. But I think if you ask it 9 out of 10 fishing fans, would rather win a Bassmaster Classic than an Angler of the Year.
And that's obviously true. You're obviously right about that, because that's what those polling results showed in 2005. But I also think that the kid in you fishing the pond is trying to win the Classic, because that's the immediate thing. That's like hitting the 3-pointer as the buzzer sounds,
Right.
Whereas you don't really win Angler of the Year or MVP by hitting a shot as the buzzer sounds.
Right.
You win it over the long haul.
That's good stuff. All right, second break of the show. When we come back, here's what we're getting into. We're getting into 10-pound smallmouth, because you're the man with the big bass podcast. So right. we can't have a 10-pounder caught within the last month and not talk to the host of the Big Bass podcast, which debuts on all podcasts and social media platforms on January 3rd, 2023, with co-host Terry Battisti of Bass Fishing Archive fame.
Absolutely.
And I also want to get your take. We'll close the show on this take. I want to get your take on how we will look back on the every fish counts era. It lasted 4 years. Will it come back? How do we measure that? Because you're talking about the meat of the careers of some of the most talented anglers to ever pick up a rod and reel. Do you look at it on numbers? Like, how do you gauge that? Where will this stand, and will it ever come back? You good with that, Mr. Duke?
I'm good with talking with anything with Matt Pangrack. Are you kidding me? On BTL?
It's BTL on a Wednesday. We'll be back right after this.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer, so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at denalirods.com. Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com. The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-Bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
All right, back. Apparently we were like live for one of those segments for a commercial, or a commercial didn't run or something, because they were like, you're live and don't know it, or maybe it was just a brief moment. I don't know. But we're back. We're wrapping things up. Clay wants to know who won most in a single tournament, Dudley or Suggs. It would have to be, was it Suggs? How many years did they do the $1 million? 2 or 3?
They did it a couple of times. I mean, yes, Suggs did it and Bennett did it. There's a guy I would love to see on BTL with you is Michael Bennett.
Yeah, I've worked on that. I've been working on that. It's a long, arduous process. So the three people who have won the most in a event, so this is no joke, it would be Suggs, Michael Bennett, and the guy who won the $1 million in fantasy fishing during that year. Fun note on that, I don't believe he's getting paid anymore for it. I bet Suggs and Bennett got their full $1 million. Moving on.
Ouch.
I don't know if you noticed this or not or heard, have been following the news, but there was a 10-pound smallmouth caught out of Lake Erie a couple weeks ago.
Mr. Gallagher, yeah, I believe that's the first certified 10-pound smallmouth since 1986 on Dale Hollow. So that shows you just how rare those critters are. It just doesn't happen. So very cool. And that 10 came from much, 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 much further north than a fish of that size has ever come from before. As a matter of fact, most of the 10-pound smallmouths ever recorded came out of Dale Hollow, which is on the Tennessee-Kentucky border, including the world record of 11 pounds, 15 ounces by David Hayes, caught on July 9th, 1955.
Is that a sketchy record? Are you going to cover that in the Big Bass podcast?
We are absolutely going to cover that in the Big Bass podcast. That's going to be a 3-episode story right there.
Oh, so it's more than just guy goes out, catches 11-15, and everyone congratulates him. If you can make 3 episodes out of it, there's some backstory there. Don't give up any of the juice, but tease us.
There's huge backstory there. There's huge backstory. He caught the fish in 1955. 40 years later, the fish was disqualified by all the record-keeping organizations. 10 years after that, the fish was reinstated, and I will claim some credit for that. So there's a lot of backstories, a lot of drama in that, and I was very fortunate to have been a part of it all.
Really? I will be looking forward to that. So here's my take on this 10-pounder. This is the first 10-pound smallmouth ever caught out of the Great Lakes. It's documented. And Randy had that 9-something out of Erie. That was the second biggest.
9 even. Yeah, 9 even.
Okay.
And that's, I guess, still the Ohio record.
This is the cleanest giant freak show fish that there has been, as far as no smoke around it whatsoever. I mean, this was done on the book, zero. Yeah, well, I saw these guys out there with or anything. There is no smoke around this. Legitimate guys, legitimate catch, followed all of the freaking procedures, weighed absolutely 100% correctly, x-rayed the whole 9 yards. This is irrefutably a 10.15 pound smallmouth bass and will never be questioned.
So it seems. Yeah, so it seems. And it's interesting. There have been plenty of giant fish. You know, the world record largemouth bass that Manabu Kurita caught back in 2009, that's a pretty squeaky clean record too. There was some people casting aspersions upon it early, but Kurita passed a polygraph. According to IGFA, Kurita submitted the cleanest world record application they had ever seen.
Wow.
It's good to see that this fish is also apparently beyond reproach. But, you know, this fish will not be subjected to the same standards because it's not a world record.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Still,
and
freak
it's
show.
a 10-pounder, but it's not like it's even the second or the third or the fourth biggest smallmouth ever recorded.
Is it in the top 10?
Yeah, it's in the top 10, which is wildly impressive. And like I said, it's the first 10 in 36 years, which is crazy.
Hey, when the other 10s were caught, were they clustered together, like same lake time wise and stuff, or is it just sporadic?
It's been awfully sporadic.
So it's not like the California deal where we just saw boom, 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 boom.
No, and I think that's a great question, because that maybe tells us a little something about the genetics. There are people in that Dale Hollow area who believe or want to believe that their fish are somehow genetically superior. And maybe they are, because Dale Hollow is one of very, very few places ever to have produced a 10-pounder. And most of their having produced the most, they still spread them out from 1955 to 1986 and some 9s mixed in as well. So that's impressive. It'll be interesting to see if more giants come out of Erie, because this will certainly put some pressure on them. And that Pelee Island, every time you read about or hear about people fishing on Erie, it sounds like they're casting to the bank of Pelee Island, doesn't it? I mean, that's the one place you always hear about.
Yeah.
So has it ever produced a 9 in that area? Has it produced 8s?
Where was Randy?
Where was Randy? His fish counted as an Ohio record, so I don't know where that puts him geographically. Maybe it has more to do with where he launched from than where he caught the fish. I don't know.
Did Billy Westmoreland ever catch a 10? Chris would like to know.
Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, he claims that he caught a couple of 10s, but he kept at least one of them very quiet because he thought that he was on the track of a new world record. Of course, the world record smallmouth is 11 pounds, 15 ounces, and I don't think that's going to be broken in my lifetime.
You don't?
I do not.
Speaking of records, you want to tie a bow on that? I mean, there's a bunch that's going to be said and that can be said and that has already been said about it. I just want to get your take on that. Do you have any other burning things that you want to get off your chest about the 10-pound smallmouth?
About the Gallagher 10?
Yeah, like were you able to sleep that night or?
Oh, I was thrilled to hear it.
That's what I meant. I mean, that's like what you live for right now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I've always been people have a weird take on what my position is or interest is in the industry. And A, I'm a magazine editor and a writer. B, that's what I am. I identify myself as, well, I'm an angler, as it says on my shirt, but I'm a bass fishing writer. So I love stories about bass fishing. And a lot of people will tell you, I'm a statistician. I'm into stats. Well, no, I just think stats are a great tool to tell a story. Or people say, oh, he's just a history guy. No, I'm just fascinated by the history, and I work it into stories where I can. And then people say, oh, he's a tournament analysis guy. No, I just think tournaments are fun and interesting and have an interesting story. Or, oh, he's a tackle guy. Well, no, I'm the editor of Fishing Tackle Retailer magazine, and I enjoy bass fishing tackle, but I'm just a bass fishing writer. And yeah, I live for any cool story, whether it's a 10-pound smallmouth or a world record largemouth or a cool new bait type coming out or an interesting tournament development. I love it all. I'm eaten up by it.
How many is there? 11-pound smallmouth swimming right now, in your opinion? Like, is the world record? Okay, let's do this. Obviously, the world record spotted bass is swimming right now somewhere, based on what we've seen recently. Like that 100%, I think, unequivocally, without a reproach, exists.
Oh, it's probably on somebody's hook and line right now.
Yeah, the world record mean mouth there's like schools of world record mean mouth down on, is it OHIV down there that they broke like 6 times last winter or something like that.
And I would add, who cares?
The guy who catches it probably cares. I would like to have anything world record. I don't care if it's a long-nosed gar, a drum, a buffalo, a frickin' side. I want to catch a world record. There's only X number of world records.
I hear you.
I catch like a red-tailed creek chub that has never been caught before, I'm taking that thing in to get weighed. So that exists. I think obviously the world record shoal bass exists out there somewhere. And red eye and Guadalupe, I mean, I think it's just a matter of those people not being fished for with the same level of.
Well, their range is so restricted. Maybe
Yeah.
if you go per surface acre, they may be as hotly pursued as the largemouth or the smallmouth or the spot.
Yeah.
It's just that their range is so restricted.
Okay. Largemouth. Is there a world record largemouth swimming in the world right now? It's a simple. I mean, you obviously can't say yes or no, like with 100% certainty.
Of course, yeah, I will say yes, but I'm doubtful that it's in the United States.
Biwa.
Biwa would be a good bet.
Okay. Is there a world record smallmouth swimming right now?
I'll say no.
That's interesting.
It's 11.15. It's more than a pound bigger than the number 2 smallmouth. More than a pound. That's the Grand Canyon.
I mean, look at how many Elite Series and MLF events you have on Thousand Islands, and how many times Big Bass is 612 or 613, and never 7 pounds. Like that's and now granted, it's a different time of the year as far as. But I'm just saying, if there were freak shows that existed, you think you would see the odd 7, 8 to 8 pounder that time of the year with the guys that are out there and the best guys on those fisheries. Like, it's just amazing to me on how they, and I understand those fish might be 7 pounds in full feed and approaching 8 pounds, but it's still, it seems that that's where it stops.
Yeah, but you and I both know that if we were out there trying to win a tournament, we'd try to find the biggest school of 4 or 4.5 pounders that we could find. And maybe we stumble on a 5 or 6. If we're trying to catch a giant fish, as soon as we hook a couple of 4s, the smart thing to do would be to leave. Get the hell out of there.
I know, but I still think Chris and Corey are out there trying to catch 8 pounders. Don't tell me that they're not trying to, I mean, they try to freak show it every time they go out.
Well, maybe after they've got a live well with 24 pounds in it, but they're not trying from the get-go.
I agree. Do we even want to get into the? Yeah, let's get into this last topic. Let's close it out with this. I've wanted to get your take on this. I don't know how neatly you can describe it, but in your opinion, put on the Ken Duke historian and statistician cap. MLF goes back to every fish. From every fish counts to your best 5 catch, weigh, release, cull up, kind of the standard that it's been since it went from the 7 fish or the 6 fish, which we've already gone through that whole history of how it's changed. But it seems like, just like I had Rick Pierce on, it seems like, 250 is kind of the horsepower deal for the last number of years. It seems like 5 fish is kind of locked in for the future. Maybe we'll go to 300. Maybe we'll go down to 3 fish. Who the hell knows? But right now it's 5 fish. To put it into perspective, we've had crazy years from Edwin Evers, Jacob Wheeler, Jordan Lee. How do you put that into historical context, and where do you put the 2019, 20, 21, and 22? So it'd be 4 years of the every fish counts with all the weight. How do you just go based off of finishes, and it doesn't matter how they got to the first place finish as far as how it went, or?
I think you have to. I think you have to go by finish. And I say that because the tournaments are so radically different that it's almost like a different sport. Almost like an entirely different sport. I remember Boyd Duckett came out and said a few years ago when they were talking about the number of, they didn't see as many big fish coming out of MLF as they had from 5 fish tournament formats. And he said, well, we fish just the same, and we're catching just as many big fish as ever. Well, no, that's not accurate. I don't believe that. I think you're fishing differently in the every fish counts format versus the 5 fish limit format. And anybody who tells me that's not the case, you got an uphill battle to convince me that that's right. I think that, but I want to say this. I think the every fish counts format is every bit as legitimate, as interesting, as dynamic as the 5 fish limit format. That doesn't mean to say that I just as soon fish an every fish counts tournament as a 5-fish limit. I think personally, I'm better off fishing a 5-fish limit tournament, but I like the every fish counts format quite a bit. I did not like all of the little nuances they added to it. Like, oh, it's got to be at least a pound. Oh, it's got to be at least 2 pounds. I didn't like that.
You just wanted every fish.
Yeah, just weigh every fish. Just weigh every fish.
There you go.
Let's go at it. So that frustrated me. But I'd still like the format. I think it failed not for the reasons that a lot of people want to point to and say that, oh, it failed because people don't like every fish counts. I don't believe that. I think that one of the reasons it failed was because they had a harder time getting their message out. They didn't have the same strength of media platforms that B.A.S.S had and has. I think that was a hurdle, a challenge for them. I think that one problem is you can't take that every fish counts format and extrapolate it to the Saturday club tournament. There's too much technology required. There's too much connectivity required. It doesn't translate. And if you can't take the format down to the grassroots, you're going to struggle. You're simply going to struggle because that's what the audience wants. They want to watch something that they feel they can also do, participate in, and be involved in. And the 5-fish limit is that. The 5-fish limit is something that everybody can basically do. You catch 5, you throw them in the live well, you haul them back to the ramp, and you weigh them. Anybody who's interested in tournament fishing has probably done that. I think every fish counts will be back in some format at some point. I don't know if it'll happen in 2 years, in 5 years, in 50 years.
For an Angler of the Year, because they're keeping it for the Heavy Hitters event and for the made-for-TV stuff. But you're talking about in a meaningful way. Not that it's not meaningful for the guys who win it. I mean for like Angler of the Year, winning tournaments, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Making championships.
But, and you know, what we haven't seen, Matt, and what I would love to see, what I would really love to see is some sort of tournament format that goes really right down to the grassroots level. Like if you and I are sharing a boat and we're out fishing one day, what are we going to be focused on? I'll tell you what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on who catches the first one, who catches the most, and who catches the biggest.
I want to see biggest. That's $1 bill. Everyone does it in the boat. I mean, if you're out with your buddy, that's what you do. $3, $1 for the first. Oh, I got $1 on you. Yeah, but I'm catching the most. Oh, but I caught the biggest.
I want to see that in a tournament format. I want these guys to launch 30 minutes early one day. They can all run to their spot, and everybody's got a clock on them and a marshal. Let's see who puts the first one in the boat, and that's worth X. And then I want to see the tournament proper start. And once the tournament proper starts, then you can find out who catches the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, on down, and you can score a point that way. So the top guy, if there are 50 boats, the top guy gets 50 points, and the bottom guy gets 0 points.
See, John Stewart saying that every fish, that's how he does it in his boat. John Stewart also fishes Milford, so typically
every
fish
is the first fish, yeah.
It's also the biggest fish, and it's also the most fish. So you're basically just fishing for $3.
And I've spent way too many days on the water where that first fish won everything, like you're talking about, Matt. That first fish was worth $3. So I want to see, and then I want to see the most, but I also want to see a not just part of the day, I want to see a focus on big fish that we've never really seen in tournament fishing. I want to see a day, or at least a segment of a day, focused to who can catch the biggest fish.
That's heavy hitters. I like heavy hitters. They do that with heavy hitters. That's $100,000 for one, 50 for one, 25 for another. That's a tournament within a tournament, but it's focused on the big bass. That's what you just described.
Every tournament, though, I pitched this to those guys. I pitched this to MLF in 2014. I said, what if you guys had a format where where every day of competition, you isolate a 1 hour or 2 hour period toward the end of the day, and you call it lunker time. And only one fish that you catch during that period counts, but you multiply its weight times 3. Okay. Now when Matt Pangrac pulls into a pocket and he's throwing a buzz bait and a big fish blows up on it, but misses, Matt Pangrac has a decision to make. Does he throw back in there with a Senko and try to catch that fish now?
Do I wait for lunker time?
Do you wait for lunker time when that 8 becomes a 24? It adds an element of strategy. Somebody will rise up and become a star as a result of this because somebody's going to be better at it than everybody else.
I could picture him, Marty Stone, being like, "It's time for Squencher's lunker time," and then bells and stuff, and
it becomes an opportunity for somebody to sponsor it. And also and I would let people use nets during this period. Let's get Fraybill or a Ranger or somebody like that involved on a sponsorship level.
I feel like boat flips only during lunker time, Ken. But you have here's the deal. You have a cooler, you have a Yeti that has water in it, and you have to boat flip it into the Yeti so you don't lose the valuable slime coating on the fish. And now you've got a cooler sponsor. You have to boat flip it into the cooler during lunker time. If we're going to have lunker time and focus on big fish, I want to see someone try to boat flip a 9.
The biggest fish I've ever seen boat flipped, and it was done on camera when I was at B.A.S.S many years ago. We were filming a live day on the lake with Terry Scroggins, and 10 minutes into our very first effort at Day on the Lake Live, Terry Scroggins boat flipped a 10, landed it at my feet.
And probably said hammer right immediately after. How about that, hammer? What about that one, hammer?
It was awesome. And I thought, man, that's a bold move for ducket rods too, because he did it with a ducket rod. And if I had tried something like that, I'd have snapped whatever I was fishing with.
It's momentum. Those guys who boat flip big ones and catch them all the time, they get that split second of momentum when they feel there's something in that feel where that fish, they know it's vulnerable, and they snatch it.
You're right, and that's clearly what you got to do. And I've learned that the hard way.
All right. You got anything else, Mr. Duke, before we wrap things up?
No, man, I've enjoyed it as always. Look out for Will Davis in the Bassmaster Classic. He's a dangerous, dangerous man. And Matt, I appreciate the plug very much for Big Bass Podcast.
That is to January 3rd.
January 3rd. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, awesome. Also, a plea to the BTL listeners, and I don't think I've done this at all this year, but we are dangerously close to 2,000 reviews on iTunes. With the year closing, finalizing contracts for next year's BTL, committed to making more shows, bigger, better, more guests, more on-location stuff. The numbers as well as the rankings and reviews, if you're listening to this on iTunes and have not left a written review or ranking, dude, I'd love to get to 2,000 by the end of the year. I think we're only like a couple dozen away. So if you have a moment, you do listen to it on iTunes, give us a star rating on BTL and leave a comment. The sponsors do see that on a monthly basis and is very important to it. Also, if you watch on YouTube, you have to sign up for Google to get your YouTube account. It's super easy, but then that allows you to subscribe. As we start going live at different times in 2023, you can turn the bell on, and then you know whenever BTL goes live. You won't miss a Mark After Dark. You won't miss an evening show, anything like that, and then you like and comment on that stuff. So that's my plea. I don't talk about it very much, but it's important. All right, this has been BTL on a Wednesday. Dude, I love these shows. Hour and a half, a plethora of information, Mr. Duke. Thank you for jumping on.
Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for the invite. BTL is a blast.
All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow, day 4 with Uncle Frank. Later.